We will start in just a few minutes. To everyone watching the replay, thank you. If you're watching on Facebook, please press play on the video. Due to a technical glitch, we can't see your name and profile picture on screen. Please put your name after your comment so we know who you are. Hello, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Sree's Sunday New York Times Read-Along. Our guest this morning is Amy Kelsey, New York Times Deputy Director of News Design for Print. My name is Neil Parekh. I'm the executive producer. I'll be the guest host today. Sree's Sunday New York Times Read-Along is produced by Digimentors in partnership with Scroll and Scroll Global, one of India's most important websites. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and our Digimentors website. We're also live on Scroll's Facebook and YouTube channels. Thank you for joining us. Please let us know where you're watching from. And by typing in a comment, please like, comment, share, retweet, tell all your friends about the great show we're going to have today. As a reminder, make sure to put your name after your comment in Facebook so that we see who you are. In some ways, this show is an extension of the coverage Sree had during election week, Sree's special election coverage. We produced over 10 hours of shows Sunday through Wednesday last week. Today, Amy Kelsey, the New York Times Deputy Director of News Design for Print, will walk us through how the election week front pages were developed. We'll walk through each day's sketch and the front page. That's Monday, this is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday with the full results, and Friday's paper as well. But we'll also get to see her initial sketches, which will be really special. We'll also compare this year's pre-election and results pages with 2020 and 2016. Sree's Sunday New York Times Read-Along is produced by Digimentors, the social, digital, AI, and events consultancy that Sree founded several years ago. Thank you, as always, to Muckrack for your longtime sponsorship of the show. A few scheduling notes. Next week, Sree and I will be in Dubai for a client, so we won't be hosting a show November 17. After that, on the Sunday before Thanksgiving, John Lee, Executive Director of Goodman Media International, a PR firm, and President of the Irish Business Organization, will be our guest. And now, on with the show. We're so glad that you're here with us today. We have such an exciting show. I am particularly thrilled. For me, this is actually rates as one of our most interesting shows we've done, focusing on the design of the election week front pages, design of the front page in general. It's going to be great. I want to welcome some of the folks watching. And again, as a reminder, unfortunately, there's a little glitch that we have, particularly on Facebook, where we're not seeing people's names and pictures on the comments. So I'm going to do my best to match them up with what I see in Facebook. But please make sure to sign your comment so we know who you are. We have, and on Twitter, we are seeing their names. So Sashi is watching from Potomac, Maryland, in the Washington, D.C. area. Jonathan, this is Jonathan watching from the East Village. Thank you, Jonathan. And that's my mom watching from Hastings-on-Hudson, New York. I'll still do my hi, Mom, even though I can't see her profile picture. We have Doug Levy watching from a 42-degree Marin County in California. Thank you. It is getting a little cold. It was cold last night. Pam and I went out to see a movie. We saw here Tom Hanks and Robin Wright, which was really good. But coming home after that, it was cold. It was definitely cold. Gunther is watching from Austria. Gunther, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar is joining us from a fiery New York, New Jersey, of course, with the wildfires, both on the Palisades across from my hometown of Hastings-on-Hudson, but also in Brooklyn and other surrounding areas. It's actually the first time I can remember brush fires and wildfires in the New York area. Ken is watching from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Thank you, Ken. And that's I'm double checking Facebook and StreamYard to see who's who. But remember, try signing your name if you can when you leave a comment. Naomi is watching from the Upper West Side. Thank you, Naomi. And Paula is watching from Tallahassee, Florida. Paula, of course, is a longtime producer of the show. So thank you so much for joining us, Paula. And our good friend Stephen Kaplan saying hi to the New York Times Read Along family. Always great to have you watching. It's really, really special. We have Diane watching from Margate, New Jersey. It's been, I think it may have been a while since we've seen you. Diane is saying she's heartbroken and enraged at the election results. Thank you for providing community to help us get through this. Absolutely, Diane. And I want to make a comment here. We will make space for people to share their comments, to share their concerns about the election results. In particular, I want to let you know about the show that we're going to do on Thursday. So if you know, I do a show focusing on mental health, shining a light on shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. This Thursday, we're focusing on post-election despair, anxiety, and fear. We're trying to create a space for people so they can share what they've experienced, what they've gone through in terms of the week after the election. And this will be, obviously on November 14th. So this is this coming Thursday. We hope you join us for that. And as far as today is concerned, our plan is to, we'll share some of the comments as they come in. But after the, our regular stop time of 10 a.m., we'll stay on air and have more of a discussion about how people are reacting to the elections. But Diane, thank you so much, and we certainly appreciate what you shared. There is Sujana switching to Twitter. Hello from the smoke and fires of New York, New Jersey. I've been trying to avoid politics recently. This is a needed exception. Thank you, Sujana. And we're going to focus on design of the front pages, which is kind of a cool way to look at the politics without getting too much into it. But we appreciate it. And particularly if you're on Twitter, please make sure to retweet the live tweet. Sojana says it's a great mental status test for you on Facebook, Neil, to go back and forth. Thank you so much. And I apologize, my eyes might wander a little bit. I work really hard to look at the camera during our shows. So if I'm looking away, that's what's going on. Janthi Patel is watching from Gujarat. And of course, we are live on, we're producing this in partnership with Scroll Global and Scroll Global. We're on their Facebook and YouTube channels as well. So wanted to welcome everyone who is watching. Bob Veritoni is watching from the smoky air of New Jersey. John Lakshmi, a longtime member of SAJA, South Asian Journalists Association, is watching from Atlanta. And Deborah Bernick is watching from DC. Thank you very much. Sujana is asking, am I on Blue Sky, an alternative to Twitter? I have an account on Blue Sky. I haven't used it. I've used Threads a little bit, and I'm trying to get back into using Threads. But it's something we all have to think about in terms of what our social presence is. So that's great. And Jayanti is saying the whole of India is waiting for elections of Maharashtra and Jharkhand, where Rahul Gandhi is doing well. So hopefully we'll hear more about that later. So thank you again for watching us this morning, spending your morning with us. We are excited for today's show. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. We will review the paper a little bit later, but we want to bring on our guest, Amy Kelsey. Amy Kelsey is the Deputy Director of News Design for Print for the New York Times, and she's responsible for designing the front page A1 of the paper every day. Let's welcome Amy Kelsey. Amy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody.
Appreciate it. So one of the first questions we ask our guests, it's 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Indian Standard Time, so it's a little easier for folks there. But what would you normally be doing at this time on a Sunday morning?
Just waking up, or like hugging a cup of coffee.
Absolutely. I'm not supposed to talk to my wife until she's had her third cup in the morning. Do you need 3 cups, or are you good before that?
Fortunately, I don't need 3. One or 2. It's a little espresso guy.
Good. We are really excited about this show. We've had several shows that we've done. We've gone to College Point and did a show with Mike Connors out there. We were at Tom Jolly's house, the print editor of the New York Times. He'd been on the show several times since then, but I still remember going to his house and doing the show from his dining room table, which was incredible. We've also had several guests that I grew up reading. I used to get the little blue bag every day in our driveway, but Clyde Haberman and Claire Smith, Bill Roden on the sports side, and we've done some really deep dives on design as well with some of your colleagues, Wayne Camadoy, Andrea Zagata, etc. Getting the opportunity to go behind the scenes and learn more about the process and talk about how the front pages were developed, particularly in this very monumental week, is a special treat. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for making the time to be with us this week. So let's go ahead and dig into the process. First, if you don't mind, describe your job for us. You do the design for A1, correct?
Yes. So I take the words that the A1 editor has, or the stories, the slugs that the A1 editor has decided on, and work with the photo editor to come up with what we want to display for the day, what's the best art, and really help prioritize what we want to show at the top of the page versus down below, and get it all set, and worry about the little details like which kind of rules to use and which fonts, and then I do it all again the next day.
And how long have you been at the Times?
I started at the Times in 2007 as a part-timer on the design staff, and I worked as a part-timer for like 3 years, and then got hired on full-time. I've been working on A1 since 2018, which I had to look up this morning. I had no idea.
And before we go into election coverage, when you're not doing election coverage, what is a typical day like in terms of putting the front page together from your perspective? What's your TikTok for a day?
Okay, the day in the life here.
A day in a life.
Okay. Well, so in the morning, I start a little bit later than some of my other colleagues, like the A1 editor and a lot of the planning team on our design staff. They start by like being in the 9 a.m. news meeting, hearing what the pitches are for the day, and they kind of we use a messaging program, Slack, and they'll kind of sum up like, here are the general stories we're thinking. Like the photo editor has like laid out some not laid out has told us of some possible things that could be our main art, and then I come in maybe like between 10:30 and 11. We meet at like 11:15 and really talk it over, see if anything else has settled, if we have a more solid lineup, and then I look at all the art with the photo editor, and we decide what is the best art of the day. From there, more meetings. There's always meetings.
Sure, sure.
At 1:30 is our final like lineup meeting, and I will show my sketches. Sometimes I do a few just to kind of explore different ways we can set things up, what feels right. And then we start building. I then go into making sure I have all the right headlines mocked up, find all the reefers for down. I use jargon sometimes,
Reefers.
but I feel like you've said reefers
Yes.
before on the show.
Yes.
So
those are the little boxes at the
Mhm.
bottom of the front page that refer
Exactly.
to the style section or business or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm looking through the paper and trying to find some interesting things to put down there, whether it's, something kind of an important news development or just like something that might be interesting. Try to mix it up. And who we call the paginator. There's yet another layer of design to A1. There's someone who's really good at using our system, and they will start later in the afternoon and take my draw and build it in our system. And
Sure.
They will coordinate with the inside designers to jump the stories off of A1 to inside, and really like see through the whole thing to make sure everything's set up right and that the editors like can see everything and have access to all the files.
Okay, great. So now election week was different, of course. We have, and we're so thankful that you shared your sketches with us. Let's go ahead and pull up your sketch. We'll start with Tuesday, actually. When you started your work, how is your process different for election week?
So for election week, on a daily basis, I'm basically doing the page the day of in the day. For election week, I started trying to think about, what kind of stories we were going to have, what we were going to be prepared for, when we might see the candidates, like how do we want to make sure we're like showing them on the right day. So I started a little bit the week before, but mostly the Sunday of the week, trying to set up some different options for how we might be able to lay out the page depending on what slugs we might end up having.
Slugs being articles.
The stories, yeah.
Right, the stories. No, that's fine. And I know some of the jargon, not all of it, so I may ask. But this is your sketch. You started on Sunday, your first version of what you thought Tuesday would look like, and then you also have And these are the reefers at the very bottom. If you see where it says not election related, slug name. This is your version 2. And I'm trying to see, like we still had 3, 4, 5 pictures. Your version 2 had only one picture, a small picture on the right-hand side. But otherwise mostly the same, right?
The only little difference is I'm trying to account for how would I deal with if we have, one more story than in the previous one. So I think you can see in the top one, actually, I could just.
Yeah, no, it says
also
5 election slugs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it not showing? Yeah, it's showing there.
Yeah.
It's small, but it's there.
Tuesday. It's so yeah, they're like exercises in like will we have 5 stories? Will we have 3 stories? If you go down to the bottom one, you can see that I was thinking about, okay, like what if we need to get something on the page that isn't election related? These first 2 sketches, 2 or yeah, I think 2.
Yeah.
We had 3 total this day. Are like all election things. And you can see, because if you stop right there, if you look at the rules above, see in the first 4 columns there, those thick rules called Scotch rules.
Okay.
Between the photo caption and the next headlines, those are little natural designators for like, this is not related coverage. These are different stories, unrelated. So this was sort of my like, okay, my thought process in, okay, so we need to show, it's the day of election day. We need to show both the candidates. How do we organize this page so that in case there's unrelated coverage that we need to get on the page? And just so happened we did, right? We had the obit, which, forgive me, right? Quincy Jones, right?
Quincy Jones. So we were looking at your early sketches before. Now this is this sketch on the left that has a picture of Quincy Jones and another picture in the corner. At what stage in the process did you develop this sketch?
So on Tuesday morning, we know we need to get Quincy on the page. We have 4 election related slugs. So fortunately, I'd set this up in an adaptable way, right? So we took those 2 columns on the right, 5 and 6, and divided them into the 4 slugs, which I wasn't done any of my sketches, but is doable because you see I went with the squish down, the reefer box is extra short today. Gives us a little more room, a little more flex on the page, especially when we need to get like 2 big 4-column photos up there. So sometimes we pivot to that when it's a big news day. So at our like 11:15, it was like, okay, here are the different things that we didn't account for. How do we make this work?
Sure. I want to bring in a comment from Sujana Chandrasekhar, who's shifting over to LinkedIn. So thank you, Sujana. A creative, healthy way to cover this week's election coverage. So thank you, Sujana. I appreciate that. And so this is where the sketch went in terms of the design, and then you see the final on the right-hand side, which I think is really interesting. And this, of course, was the Tuesday, which was election day itself, with the headline, "Worry and Hope on Last Day of Voting." And what is that called again? When you have the headline, it's a banner headline, or it's a...
Yes, that's right.
Right. It's a banner headline in italics in particular. You can see that's mentioned in your sketch that you set it up that way. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Wednesday early sketches and see what your thinking was, what your plan was for that, and then what ended up happening. So this is the early sketch, and now you see there are 2 kind of big boxes for pictures, and we will kind of zoom in a little bit so we can see it better what that was. So you had a plan for 3 election slugs. Your initial plan two big pictures, a big banner headline again, and then a few other, a voting photo, another voting photo, maybe detail on the right. Sorry, and then again, non-election related reefers at the bottom. And again, you did this on Sunday? Were you thinking that far ahead?
Yeah. So that's my thoughts on Sunday, and I am, looking back at how we approached things in 2020, the last cycle. Thought, we don't expect to have a winner, right? So how do we set up this page where it still makes sense? So we definitely need to see both candidates. And at this point, it really is about both candidates. So I was like, okay, hopefully, they will be out having campaign events, and we'll get, a live picture of each. Maybe they're voting. It turned out, Harris did, she mailed in her ballot. So
I didn't realize that. Interesting.
Yeah, so no luck there.
Yeah.
So yes.
And we should point out that the text at the top is just dummy text. There's, all his victories. That doesn't mean anything. It just gives a sense that it's a stacked banner headline.
Yeah, if I unfold that shape, it's just got line after line of just words.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this was one option, and then your second option with 4 election slugs still had the 2 big pictures at the top, but the bottom looked a little bit different. You had a kicker headline for the voting photo. You had one option, 4 election slugs with a photo stack, so a few more photos on the bottom below the fold, focusing on voting. And then
I
you
had talked to the photo editor and knew that we had a ton of photographers out across the country taking voting photos. So I thought, I'll talk to the photo editor that morning, and if they feel like, they want more presence of, across America, we could pivot to something like this that sort of incorporated both.
And then you also had 3 election slugs, even 2 unrelated slugs, even though it's the day after the election. So the big 2 photos, and then a couple of photos at the bottom. And so you went in with these options.
Yes. Yeah. Just, hoping that we can sort of keep the whole page to the one theme for the day. But, just having backup plans in your mind is sort of the best way to keep on your toes for when you have changes.
Sure. So then let's take a look at what Wednesday actually looked like. We had the left-hand side ended up being your final sketch, 3 stacked photos, very larger than what you were initially thinking. And then in the 2 photos of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump on the right. And you see the final, a splintered nation in suspense as millions of votes are tallied. This was the Wednesday morning front page. What time did you have to finish this front page on Tuesday night?
Well, our first deadline's 5:00. So that's when the first one went to press. Yes.
5 p.m. And I know, we've talked to 5 p.m. Eastern. We've talked to Mike Connors before and Tom Jolly. The New York Times is printed across the country at printing plants, with local, in partnership with local newspapers. I know when I lived in Seattle, it was the Seattle Times that printed it. And here in Washington, D.C., the Washington Post prints the New York Times and puts it in front of my door. And still, I don't get a blue bag. I'm still very upset about that. But in order to get it to those other presses, that first edition is a 5 p.m. Eastern time deadline. And let's stay with this a moment. Election night at the Times. So you're working on this on Tuesday night. What was Tuesday night like for you in general?
In general, it's always a little hectic, right? Even even for us, I think this year, we knew with our early deadlines, like, and the expectations of the election, we knew we're not going to have results. Like, so there was a lot of thinking beforehand of like, what kind of stories can we have out there that still make sense the next day, even if results have happened later in the evening. But along the lines of just like the vibe in the newsroom is, there's a lot more people in there. Yeah, I thought, it's it's got a little more buzz than usual. It's one of those days where the newsroom actually feels like, the cliche movie scenes of a newsroom, right? Where people are running around like that's not normal. It's an office, but election day might be the one day where there's a lot going on.
There's this great article that was produced by the Times Insider team. And I always say this is my favorite part of the newspaper, the Insider columns. They did some photography and reporting on what was going on at headquarters on election night. So there's a picture earlier we showed senior editors in the Times Manhattan newsroom on election night. And then this one is, I believe that's Mike Barbaro, the producer for The Daily. Rob Sipko, a senior producer for The Daily, with Michael Barbaro, who's the host. And then they went through, as folks were talking with colleagues, et cetera. Elizabeth Kennedy, the White House editor, and Elizabeth Buemiller, I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. We're talking with coverage plans with David Halfinger and the national editor Jia Lin Yang. So as they're walking around, and then here we have this is you.
That's me, and the photo editor Beth is to my left there.
Yeah, and we can see now you're working on the design, and we can see the 3 stacked photos right on your computer screen.
And that's the earlier edition, because you can't really see it from here, but that is a different photo in the middle. We changed the middle photo for the later edition.
And so in terms, and this says, this is Amy Kelsey, Deputy Director of News Design for the print newspaper, working on the front page. The first edition, as we said, went to press at 5 p.m., but editors and designers scrambled to adjust late editions. As the polls closed and more results came in, the last edition was sent to the printers at 10 p.m. Eastern. That's the edition that would have hit the streets in New York City. The absolute the last call. This was an earlier deadline than previous years, correct?
Yes, in recent years, the deadline has moved up pretty significantly. Because of various like press closings. Especially like I think where we printed out in LA closed, and that had to move to another city, and so it just takes longer to distribute the paper. So like our California readers now get this 5 o'clock edition, and it's just it's a little earlier every time, but we don't even usually have that. 10 p.m. was like a special like postscript for the big news night. Usually our last one would go out for 8.
Mm-hmm. And of course, this is again what that final front page looked like with that picture in the middle that was swapped out for the final version. But this is what you were able to do for the Wednesday papers. Let's go ahead and look at what your plans were for Thursday, so we can kind of get a sense of what was going on then. Give me one moment to bring that back up. There we go. Yeah. So this is
we didn't know that this was going to be the Thursday paper. When we're thinking about it ahead of time, we're not sure how long it's going to take to get all the results. So I sort of like made it as a whenever the heck we know page, right?
Sure.
It just happened that this year the timing really worked out. Like as far as our deadlines go. It was definitely like way past when we could get it in the paper Tuesday night, but it was early in the day, Wednesday, so we didn't have to set up like a completely different, completely unrelated page and then like scramble to change it to the results page. So that actually, was beneficial from a workflow perspective.
So you pushed that to Thursday this year in terms of the planning for the results. These are your early sketches. So we'll take a closer look. The initial plan, 3 election slugs under event head with US map. And this is, again, a banner headline with a stacked headline underneath. So big picture, and then hopefully the US map. And all at the bottom, it doesn't say unrelated. So these were all going to be election related refers.
Oh, no, I was just sloppy mock-up.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to call that
copy
out.
the label over.
Sure.
The label was
so,
just kind of for other, I knew what I was going to put down there, so I didn't necessarily have to.
Sure.
It all up.
Your other version, again, had that huge picture, but potentially 3 pictures at the bottom with the different articles with the 3
Yeah, this
tickers.
was sort of in case we weren't able to have the US map. It's like, what do we want to put down there? This sort of mirrors a little bit of our common big news layout, as you'll see when we talk about previous cycles. You'll kind of see that repeated.
Yep. And then you also had another option with a 4 election slugs under event head if we need to pivot to a vertical picture. So you had a lead article on the right, or an article with the display picture, but a big iconic picture as you have in your placeholder text.
Yeah. See, I didn't realize my silly notes were going to get shared. So
this is part of history now. I would want this up in the museum, up at the top floor of the Times myself if I was doing, but we'll have to talk with David Dunlap about that. But no, this is, again, we know, and I want to acknowledge that you did not prepare this knowing that you were going to be on the show, that we were going to share your drafts and your notes publicly. So we are very thankful that you are letting us do that. I certainly wouldn't want my drafts and my early sketches, my chicken scratch or whatever I was doing, to suddenly be analyzed and reviewed. But we do appreciate this kind of inside look at how this all came together. So this was your third option of how you might go. So let's go ahead and take, yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. This was my least favorite, but again, like, you sort of need to be prepared when you need to make changes. So I was really hoping that the map could be big, like in this version, if you make the photo really deep and vertical, like there wasn't enough room to do like the 3-column map at the bottom. So things aren't quite like as tidy as I like them to be.
Sure.
So yes.
And so then this is what we ended up with. Your final sketch. Now, this is what's interesting to me is that those are early sketches, and then your final sketch seems to have a little bit more detail than we saw earlier with the actual headline, the picture, the map picture as well. So then you ended up reverting back to the dominant, kind of the full width picture and the map at the bottom. And this is, again, the results issue effectively on Thursday morning, the full results of the election.
Yeah. So fortunately, yes, the horizontal was able to work out, which also gives it a little bit of different look than the previous cycles. I'm able to put all that stuff on the page because, like I said, we knew what was happening early in the day. So in our 11:15 meeting, we were going through like photo options and trying things on the page to see how they work, how the scale looks. Does it have the right kind of movement to it? Is it too busy? Things like that. And the the headlines go through so much approval process that they're sort of thinking about them early in the day on these kind of days, because they need to go through masthead approval, and I think so. What we do to set this up, if you want me to really get in the weeds
Yeah,
here,
please.
is when
Please.
we have a big headline like that, we like to set that up as like a graphic file, so we can take those words and like kern the typography a little bit in InDesign, and then we export it so that it is to our liking. It's just a little bit easier outside our system that way. So that's like just a big like blorp, a big graphic file on the page that we have obsessed about the letter spacing on. Yeah.
With the headline, and so that's a banner headline, and then the stacked headline underneath. You also have a horizontal line. Is that different, or is that indicate anything under the banner?
The little rule between the two
Yeah.
layers of headline,
Yeah.
that's usually there. Yeah.
Okay. Whenever you have a banner. Okay. Great.
Yeah, dividing the layers there. We obsess over every last thing. I was like getting second opinions on how wide that rule should be. It's very, very in the weeds.
Absolutely. I want to say that you have a fan, Ken Fisher from Iowa, is saying, "Amen, Neil. Super grateful for the glimpses of your design process, Amy." So folks are really appreciating what you're sharing and what you're able to bring to us this Sunday morning. We want to also kind of continue the conversation. So this is what this looked like this year. This is Fridays, that shows the president-elect spun his own grievances into political gold. You kind of see the sketch, and then the final. Here are the three front pages that we have. We're looking at the Tuesday, in this case, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but really the pre-election, the day after, and election results, just to give folks a sense of how that evolved. We also want to show what that looked like in 2020, where we had kind of the headline, the banner headline, "Anxiety Mounts with Race at Bitter End. Turnout soars along with suspense as nation in tumult delivers verdict." And then the results issue, "Biden beats Trump. Race is finally called after record turnout. Chaotic term ends with rare incumbent loss." And that, of course, was a few days later. That wasn't the Thursday. That was, I think,
That's
Saturday.
Sunday.
Or Sunday even. Yeah, Saturday is when it was called, and this is Sunday's paper. And you worked on these pages as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. Though it was still, Tom Bodkin doing the main draws, but I was working on A1 with him at the time. So on the Tuesday paper, we wanted to show both the candidates were just out like campaigning like crazy that day. So we went with this grid, and you can see like 3 Biden stops and 3 Trump stops, like stacked side by side, because it was sort of just bonkers, like their campaign schedule.
Sure. And then you didn't work on the front page in 2016,
No.
but we do have the pre-election and then the election results page. And this was, we're showing it over 2 days. This was the Tuesday morning article, front page, "Clashing final pitches in swing state blitz." And then Wednesday, they actually did show the results with Trump triumphs the day after, right?
Yes. Later deadlines, and I'm sure they slowed the presses for us that day, because I remember being at work until 3 a.m. But so that year we were able to get results the night of.
So that was the proverbial call to Mike Connors. Maybe not quite hold the presses. We still
Right.
have breaking news where
it's never dramatic. You want it to be dramatic, right?
it's not like the movies. It's not. There's no red phone right to Mike's desk. I'm sure there was a lot of coordination, a lot of planning involved in this, and thinking through kind of different scenarios. And of course, thinking back to 2016, unlike this year where everything was close and it wasn't sure which way it would go, and some folks were obviously surprised, even shocked by the outcome. In 2016, it was a very different story. All the assumptions were that Hillary Clinton would win, and there's even a famous mock-up front page. Dave Dunlap, again, the historian for the Times, has shared this on social media that had a headline of Hillary Clinton winning that obviously had to be scrapped as the Times needle moved from Hillary all the way to Trump as that night evolved. But we've come a long way since then. Certainly, 2016 and then 2020. The elections in 2020 were very different. But earlier in 2020, we had a little thing called a pandemic, which upended things quite a bit. I still remember sharing this article that was in the paper. Meet the team producing the newspaper from home. So this is going to take you back a little bit in terms of your work with the Times. Going back to COVID, going back to that time where everyone was working from home, instead of having meetings around a table, you were meeting on, it's not Zoom, you were meeting on Google Meet, right?
And this makes me laugh because, we were, this is new for all of us, and we had to change our meeting room after this went up, right? You could see the location of our meeting room in the
if we zoom in real close,
so just
you can almost make out the URL for the Google Meet.
We were all learning.
Did you change your meeting room before anyone noticed that and jumped into a meeting, or did someone actually try and jump in?
I don't know that anyone tried to jump in, but yes, some observant person was like, "Uh-oh, that was dumb." So
that wasn't what we intended. We have a comment, and again, I'm checking Facebook to see who it is, but for newspaper designs are very important for the readers. Thank you, Amy, for doing excellent work. And it's not just a Facebook user. That's actually my mom watching from Hastings on Hudson. So you have a fan in my mom as well. But this this article shows kind of how that work got done. I remember talking about it on the read along when it came out. And we had a couple other pictures that talking about the print hub. Normally the employees work in the print hub on the 4th floor of headquarters, but now they're designing pages in New Jersey, writing headlines in Queens, selecting photos in Brooklyn. And everyone is working remotely at once. We have a few pictures we want to show. This is a colleague, Andrea Zagata. I'm going to make it just a little smaller for folks. There we go. So we can see both. And even smaller. There we go. So Andrea Zagata on the left, a news designer, works while Abby the dog and Izzy keep her company. And Andrea has been a guest on our show. And who's on the right? Who's that cutie under the table?
Derek. That's my dog.
Derek. And that's your workspace during the pandemic. And we see our hard copy version of that green sketch. Can you talk about that?
Yes. So throughout the years, historically, like we've always sketched out A1 on these green sheets, which is why you see my mock-up is always that color of green. I've got my notepad here. But so during the pandemic,
let's see that notepad real quick. There we go. Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, as you could probably see better on the digital file, you know, it's got the measurements on here. I'm bad at cameras. Here we go.
No, yeah, we can see it. We can see it.
You know, like notes for where the like reefers start so that we know like where to line things up. So during the pandemic, it just became super cumbersome. You know, like Bodkin was drawing them out on the green sheet and then taking a picture and sending it to me, and then I was making the mock-up again with my ruler. And though that's the like, I miss that moment. The like drawing lovely ruler lines was like a zen moment of my day, right? But drawing it all out, then anytime there's a change, like taking your eraser and rewriting and then rescanning and then uploading was just taking a lot of time. So I had already been toying with how to like digify this process a little bit. And that's when it really became super important. So I scanned this in, transitioned to like some Adobe products. I tried it in Illustrator first. That was a fail. Because I scanned it in 1:1. You know, this is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I set up all the headlines would look right, but you couldn't like change, you know, like, oh, I want to see what this would look like a point size bigger. You couldn't do that because it wasn't 1:1 scale. So like the 22 point on the real page was like 11.2 or something in the original document. So try it again, and you can see that like now I've kept the sort of dimensions so that it'll print out on this 8.5 by 11 sheet, but it's 1:1. So all of the point sizes on my mock-up are the same as what they would be in the on the actual page.
Got it.
And it like really helps you visualize like, you know, changes without having to slow down the process or, you know, like put it all on the real page first. Yeah.
Another great innovation coming from the pandemic, you know, from what I do on a daily basis, or, you know, kind of just for shopping, the drop, go to Target and get your bags dropped in your trunk. We love that in terms of how efficient that is, but this obviously made things much more efficient in terms of the design. Janti Patel, watching in India, has a comment just about the color. Green is better than red for health. Maybe it might be more calming. I'm not sure. Is there a reason that you know that it's a green tint for the page? Is that just?
I do not know. I don't know the history of where the color came from.
Interesting. You know, we also want to acknowledge there's a question from Twitter. Anita Green is asking, what is your background in education? What was your training? She always likes to share with students what people do, especially in the art and design fields.
I went to Ohio University in their...
The Ohio?
Oh, no. Yeah. What did I say? I went to Ohio University, not Ohio State.
Oh, the Ohio State.
One.
That's right.
Right.
Very different.
Visual communication was my degree. Gosh, I was like, I can't even really remember. Yes. But that's it. Yeah.
Great. No, that's really great. Again, as a reminder for folks, our guest has been Amy Kelsey, Deputy Director of News Design for Print at the New York Times. And we are proud to produce this show. Digimentors produces this show in partnership with Scroll and Scroll Global, one of India's most important independent websites. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and our Digimentors website. We have a friend watching on Instagram. We can't show it on the screen, unfortunately, but Alia Papageorgiou is watching from Brussels. She's a journalist there. So thank you, Alia. Always great to have you watch the show. We had a great discussion looking at the front pages, how the front pages were developed over election week, and we have looked a little bit about how it compared to previous years, what election night was like at the New York Times headquarters. And as you just saw, Amy, we went back in time to COVID when the design team had to work remotely, and saw some of the innovations, some of the changes they had to go through to accommodate that. And some of those certainly have stuck. I do want to bring in, and this is not something that you need to comment on, but just to acknowledge Deborah Bernick is watching from Arlington, Virginia. She has an opinion on the front page. Many Jewish New York Times subscribers feel there's a front page photo bias, constant women, children in Gaza pictures, no Hamas or Hezbollah fighters. And she gives a reference, could check honestreporting.com. I will say that I know that over time, there have been various criticisms of the Times, whether it's photos, whether it's coverage from different regions, et cetera. And that's obviously going to come up. And that's certainly not something that we are asking you about, Amy. Your job is to work with the editors and the photo editors to figure out how to put everything together. But it's certainly an interesting process, an interesting conversation to have. Mary C. Curtis is saying, nice change of pace after our nonstop election coverage this past week. Absolutely. Mary joined us for several hours, more than 10 hours of coverage, Sree's special election coverage. We were live on Scroll social channels for several of these shows. And then we also did a special show on Indian Express, 11 p.m. Eastern time. I'll tell you that it almost took everything I had to be able to produce shows 9 p.m. Eastern noon on Tuesday Eastern, 9 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Eastern, and then come back at 8:30 a.m. Eastern the next morning for a morning after. But Mary, thank you so much for joining us and for all of the great insights you provided over that time period. Mary C. Curtis is a journalist based in North Carolina, a columnist with Roll Call and host of the Equal Time podcast. And Jonathan is saying Mary was great. Jonathan watched almost all of those shows. So we're going to take a change of pace now. Amy, we're going to focus on this week's New York Times. I want to remind folks that we are, interested in kind of how you are, how your reactions were to the election results. If folks can stay after 10 a.m., we will make time to process our reactions to last week's results. And I want to remind you that we will be doing a special show of Shining Light on Shadows. This is the show that I produce focusing on mental health. Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. Dawn Helmrich Newberg is my co-host. Shauna Vercher is going to be our guest. We're going to be focusing on post-election despair, anxiety, and fear, the emotional side of what we went through over the, really on Tuesday night and then the several days later. So if you have a chance to stay today for a little bit of this conversation, that would be great. But definitely join us on Thursday, where we will spend more time focusing on that. But for now, let's go ahead and focus on the newspaper. And we have the front page lined up over here. We'll focus on that overhead cam. And as I step off, I'll just mention that what I think is interesting is that the front page has a wraparound ad for a new movie that's coming out. I always think it's interesting to point out the ads, particularly the full page ads and the coverage like that. This is the 688. When America Needed Hope, They Delivered, based on the heroic true story, a film by Tyler Perry. So this came wrapped around the paper this morning about the 688 Central Postal Directory Battalion. And this has a letter of gratitude from Oprah Winfrey at the bottom to the historic 688 Central Postal Directory Battalion. So this is a really interesting, I think it's a well done ad, well done wrap around. This is the back page, Kerry Washington. When America Needed Hope, They Delivered, only on Netflix, December 20th. I will certainly be keeping an eye out for that. Now, we should point out that Amy works, I want to say Sunday through Thursday, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So you're working on the papers for Monday through Friday for the weekday. So we will not ask you about the front page and how this was put together, but we appreciate you staying on, and we'll talk to you a little bit about your kind of what you do on the weekends to unwind, and what else you take a look at within the New York Times family. But let's take a look at the front page real quick. The display photo, I cried an ocean of tears. The tens of thousands of Ukrainian women and men widowed by the war are finding different ways to cope with the grief. So that's the photo. On the left, the lead stories: Democrats sift through rubble seeking answers, assigning the blame. Foreign chiefs quicken stride to Trump's ear, trying to build bridges and to mend fences. If folks watched Saturday Night Live last night, you saw that the cast of Saturday Night Live all pledged their fealty and loyalty to President Trump, to make sure that they weren't on any lists. Of course, it was all in jest, but this is something that's happening for real. The two other articles on the front page: Gazans spend a whole year in a blackout. A child influencer whose avid fans were men, seeing the dismal side of the internet and profiting from it. This is something we've actually spent time on with the New York Times Read Along. Julie Shelfo was our guest, Mothers Against Media Addiction. We also had a reporter from the Wall Street Journal who did a lot of research on how Facebook and Instagram target children and what they serve up to folks when they start accounts. It's very disturbing what is going on social media. Australia actually I believe they passed legislation banning social media for teenagers. The other articles: in tumultuous times, more readers are reaching for magical healing fiction. So a little bit more post-election kind of thoughts. And then you see the reefers at the bottom, as Amy was talking about, from two articles in the national section: sports, international, Singapore's cat problem. That's a little picture that you might see there.
We love when we can get animals onto
you love
the
when you
page.
can get animals onto. Now you have you just have the one dog.
Yeah, I do, just the one.
Yeah, we used to have a cat for 19 years. His full name was Lyle Lovett Parekh. It might give you an indication of my musical taste. That was a trade-off. We got him several years before our daughter was born. That was my wife's way of making sure I don't try and name our kid Lyle Lovett. We gave it to the cat.
That was smart.
But he was special. We have other reefers about Sunday, the crackdown in Amsterdam after the soccer match, the altercation between Jewish fans, Israeli fans of the soccer team, and local soccer hooligans. The Spartan urban life from influencer to executive. Arts and leisure, holiday movies about Wicked, and then one about Elon Musk's secret compound in Sunday Business. So when you're not looking at the paper on a Sunday, Amy, what other New York Times products do you interact with? Because there's a whole lot of things, and we've talked about this on the show. It's more than just a news organization at this point, right? There are all the games, Wordle, and the crosswords and spelling bee. There's the New York Times cooking app. Are you done with the Times when you go home Thursday night? Like, you don't want to think about NYT until Sunday, or do you still kind of connect with the enterprise in some way?
Well, I do try to detach myself from the news on my days off. Just, you can't be on all the time, right? And
Sure.
looking at the paper, I look at the paper all day, every day of my work week. So I sort of zone out when I can, just to take a little mental rest. But I am still like severely addicted to the spelling bee. Try to do Wordle every day, but I can't maintain a streak. Like, it just doesn't happen. I always
Sure.
miss a day.
Sure. Oh, it happens. It happens.
And like, the cooking app has just like replaced all other cooking apps for me.
The New York Times cooking app, absolutely.
Yeah, but I purposely I play my games on the games app instead of going through the main Times app, just so I don't like accidentally like get sucked into the news for the day.
That's great. The Times Insider, this is on page 2, and this is, as I've mentioned, my favorite page, is an article, "A Spectator to His Team Celebrating Pride," by Rory Smith. Rory Smith is a global sports correspondent for the Times, based in the north of England. And I think I remember when we saw this in the paper a few weeks ago, if it's the same article I'm thinking of. My job title at the New York Times is, on reflection, probably a touch too grand. I'm a global sports correspondent, but that's not the sort of title you mention to people. And I'm wondering, I think that there was I'm not sure which article this is, but this is the Keighley Cougars have embraced their new owners, Ryan O'Neal and Kane Garcia, who are promoting inclusivity on and off the field. That's right. I remember this article where this team was embracing the LGBTQ community there. We had Megan DeTrolio on as a guest, I think about 2 years ago now. She is the editor for page 2 and page 3. They did a redesign at that point. They redid that article, that section, and then added a few sections here. The Dateline, where Times journalists are reporting from around the world. This one includes Alexandria, Minnesota, Colombia, Karachi, Pakistan, and Taipei, Taiwan. And then there's this column in Times Past. I mentioned David Dunlap earlier. He's the curator of the museum at the Times, which houses New York Times artifacts, which was, when we went to the Times, my birthday week 2 years ago when I turned 50. I spent the week in New York. In addition to going to 2 Yankee games, I did a tour of College Point with Mike Connors, and we interviewed Jake Silverstein in his office on a Wednesday, focusing on the New York Times Magazine that was coming out that Sunday. And after that interview, we got a tour of the New York Times Museum, which was just an incredible thrill for me. This article, "Exploring an Artifact from the Archives of the New York Times, on Strike and on Pause." This is about the Newspaper Guild of New York on strike against the Times. The strike against New York Times, which began November 4th, is the latest in a century's worth of sporadic labor troubles between the newspaper and unions representing its workers. This was from last year. In December 2022, over 1,100 members of the Times Guild, another unit of the News Guild of New York, and includes reporters and editors, staged a one-day strike after negotiations with the Times over their contract renewal stalled. They reached a deal in May 2023. I am a proud former staffer for a union in Washington State. I worked with SEIU 775, and my mom is a retired member of SEIU in New York, so come from a union family, and I certainly supported the Guild when they took their action against the Times. International articles, Where the Devil Is It? Court vacates India's ban on the satanic verses. That is interesting. It's such a long story with Salman Rushdie. It's Salman Rushdie, actually, and he actually was a guest on a show we produced right after Kamala Harris got the was tapped by President Biden to take his place on the ticket. We produced a show, South Asian Men for Harris, and Salman Rushdie was in one of our opening speakers. What an incredible, very unassuming and friendly gentleman backstage. This is the cat article. Singapore, usually orderly, has had difficulty dealing with a messy problem: cats. Preparing food for community cats in an industrial estate in Singapore. You mentioned earlier, anytime you can get cats or animals into the paper was a good thing. Have you seen, can you think of other like features that the Times has done on animals? Anything stand out for you?
Oh gosh, I don't know. We just like to, when we can get a little critter in a little reefer box, it just brings a little joy.
Absolutely. I would say that for social media, it certainly helps. One of the things to experiences I've seen to feed the algorithm is you need to get those kinds of pictures, those kinds of kind of fun images in between the news and the seriousness. I'm using my alma mater. I remember a conversation with the social media manager for Wesleyan University in Connecticut, where they have to post a range of things, research from professors, latest announcements, their president's blog, etc. Some of that can be a little dry, understandably. But what they said is that they make it a point to every now and then feature this squirrel that hangs out outside their window at South College on College Row. And when they do that, their engagement spikes. People, like the picture, comment, share it, etc. And that, makes sure that the next article they share, which might be an update from the president or a report, will get served up to followers, right? Because people see they're engaging with the account. So I don't know if that the Times necessarily has to do that, and then that's why they do this. But at least it's a nice, fun. It's a palate cleanser, as we might say, particularly around election week. Just something different to read than all the serious news. We have an article here: quick action needed to avert Gaza famine. UN backed panel warns Gazans endure a year in a blackout amid war. And then below the fold, Qatar pauses its effort to broker stalled truce talks. So that's the Middle East coverage for this week's Sunday paper. This is a big article about how Ukraine's war widows. This was from the front page. So this is, if you go back, this was a display photo, right? It had the caption and said page 8. Is there a term for that, Amy, when there's no article, but it's just the photo and it's like a reefer with a photo?
Yeah, we sort of just call it a photo reefer. Sometimes if there's just like a daily news photo and we don't have a story to accommodate it or to go along with it, that would be like a photo floater. But yeah, reefer kind of is a term that may be all encompassing now that I say it out loud.
Sure. So this is it's a full page article, inside 3 photos at the top and a big photo in the center of the page. Here's again, we like paying attention to the ads as well. This is an ad from the ACLU. Dear President-elect Trump, in case you had any doubt, we are the American Civil Liberties Union, and we're not moving to Canada. Certainly several people I know have talked about, they may have kind of offhandedly mentioned it over the year during kind of the election run-up, but some people are seriously looking at their options of moving out of the country out of concern for their safety. This is an article about Trump won, so would-be migrants hurry north or opt to stay home. Let's see. We have during chaotic times, the readers are reaching for healing fiction. We mentioned that earlier. I think that was a reefer. And here's an interesting 2-page spread. She was a child Instagram influencer. Her fans were grown men. This is what we were talking about earlier in terms of the impact on social media. This is showing some screenshots of comments and captions from various posts. Ordinarily, folks, as regular viewers might know, while we're doing the paper, when Sree is hosting, I usually try and drop in links to articles that we're talking about so you can refer to them later. Of course, it's a little more challenging when I am hosting as well. But hopefully you'll have a chance to go back and find some of these articles and read through them. Or as we know, some of the folks in California who are watching live, they don't get the paper till maybe 9, 10 in the morning. They will pick up that print edition after watching the show to get a sense of what they want to read. This is an article about what happened in Amsterdam. Amsterdam prohibits protests after anti-Semitic attacks on soccer fans. And then on the national side, more precious than 1,000 words in North Carolina, piecing life back together after Hurricane Helene, one mud-splattered photograph at a time. That's the incredible impact that Helene had, particularly on Asheville, North Carolina, and the western part of the state. Here's an interesting article I'm going to definitely take a look at later. Librarians face a mental health crisis after traumatic events at work. Lauren Canedo, the executive director of the Urban Librarians Unite, has studied the trauma endured by library staff. In September, her organization began offering virtual peer-led support groups. After leaving his library job, this is the caption on the right-hand side, Michael Threes has focused on social media where he promotes literacy and has been working on a children's book and a line of goods that includes t-shirts and mugs. I don't know if it's this article, but I know that there's been a lot of concern, a lot of pressure on libraries to pull books from the shelves. I wonder if that's what this is focusing on. In upstate New York, father faces down his son's killer and his grief. And then we have more election coverage. Trump win fuels fear among New York migrants. And Hochul signals to Trump willingness to collaborate. I know one of the things they talked about was Governor Hochul's earlier proposal to introduce congestion pricing on New York. Do you live in the city, Amy? We're not asking for your address, but just do you have to commute in or?
Yeah, I am. I'm in Queens. I'm in Astoria.
And do you know, were you tracking on that? That would the congestion pricing, if you had to get into the Times office, that would have impacted you, I assume, right?
I mean, I'm not going to drive into Midtown. That's crazy.
Subway?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Good. That's smart. Smart. So here's the rest of the election coverage. Biden's lift to industry was too late for voters. There's this article, Democrats sift through the rubble, seeking answers and inciting blame. And then with ready orders and an energy czar, Trump plots pivot to fossil fuels. That's some of the election coverage on Sunday, several days after. And then the back page is a Wicked Good window unveiling with special guest Cynthia Erivo. It's a Bloomingdale's ad. So let's see. And then one thing I always like to point out is that in New York, College Point Press can print up to 45 pages, I think, in a section, but the printing presses around the country can't do that. So you end up getting two sections of the A-book, effectively. And this almost gives you, this article on 25 kind of stands out. This is more election coverage inside the federal workforce that Trump has promised to eviscerate. I know that usually in this section, there's also the obits. So let's just take a look at what we have here. This is election coverage, but this is an obit. Ben Baldanza, who brought no frills flying to Spirit Airlines, dies, 62. And then at the bottom, Jim Hoagland, 84, foreign reporter whose work earned him 2 Pulitzers. He was a foreign correspondent, editor, and columnist for the Washington Post. A journalist with a thick Rolodex and an exhaustive knowledge of global affairs. When you do look at the paper occasionally, or in general, do you read obits? Are you a fan of reading obits, Amy?
Oh, I like to, I've been trying to occasionally when I can put obits in the reefer because there's always something like completely different. There's always somebody that you haven't heard of but is fascinating. So yeah, they're like a little gem, I think.
They are absolutely. We're a big fan of obits here, and there's a colleague of yours at the Times also named Amy Padnani on the obits desk. She did a great series called Overlooked, and we featured her on the show and looked at that whole series, obits for women and people of color who did not get an obit the first time around when they first passed. This is definitely a great project. We have about 10 more minutes with Amy, so we will continue. This is the obit section. Jeff Capes, a 75, dies, made athletic exploits look like child's play. And then Jonathan Hayes, 95, B-movie picture and star of Little Shop of Horrors, has passed away as well. So that is most of the A-book. We'll set that aside, and let's just take a quick look at what else is in the paper. The Sunday Opinion. All you see are the, in terms of the graphic, the Make America Great Again hats from Donald Trump. The bottom, this is the new establishment. MAGA is who we are now, by Carlos Lozada. That was a reefer this morning, although it just said Sunday Opinion Carlos. I don't think it mentioned a headline today. It's what Trump does next that will define him, by Orrin Cass. Democrats walked into the Republicans' trap, by Ben Rhodes. And what we can learn from how Harris lost, by Tressie McMillan Cottom. Of course, there have been a number of theories and number of angles on what may have led to Harris losing, President Trump winning. I'm not sure that we'll get any clear answers anytime soon. Sunday Business is focusing on what happened when I let AI control my life. For 1 week, it told me what to wear, what to eat, and what to do with my kids. It was not a disaster, by Kashmir Hill. And you can see the artwork Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with a robotic hand and some interesting images there. The other articles, Elon Musk wants big families. His own is complicated. I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more about Elon Musk in the next several days, weeks, months, etc. Sunday Styles, a canvas wants to be the brush. Emma Chamberlain found fame online, but she is now posting less and diving into business ventures. And then at the top, are these also reefers? Or
yeah, the Skybox.
Skybox.
Yeah, more reefers inside.
Tired of the Burning Man talk on dates. That's a Modern Love column. Better than basic stylish trench coat options for fall. And then on the right-hand side, Vows of Brownstone changed their lives, and Selling and Snow, the English teacher's star TikTok tactic. That's interesting. The bottom below the fold, at the intersection of art and blight. On social media, a viral photo of a Brooklyn street corner is something of a Rorschach test. As a reminder, if folks want to stay after 10 a.m. and talk about your reactions, your thoughts about the elections, we would welcome that conversation. And we are going to have a longer conversation on Thursday on the other show that I produce, Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. Dawn Helmrich Newberg and I co-host that show. Shauna Vircher, who is a former guest on this show, will join us for a conversation about post-election despair, anxiety, and fear. That's Thursday, November 14th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific. We will wrap up this show in just a few minutes. That's the Art and Leisure with Cynthia Arrivo and Ariana Grande on making Wicked and forging a bond in the process. The book review, Looking for the Promised Land. Aaron Robertson's grandparents had a farm in Promised Land, Tennessee. In a new book, he explores the history and meaning of such utopian communities for African Americans. Are you a book person, Amy? Is that a weekend diversion for you?
I try.
Yeah. Fiction, nonfiction?
Nonfiction. I don't get to read as much as I'd like. I'm trying to reincorporate it into my day. But
Sure.
you sort of read all day at work, and then you're just like, I need a little break.
Oh, I get it. My daughter actually didn't know that I knew how to read because she hasn't seen me with a good book, pouring through it. I have actually read several books on my phone, on my Kindle. I usually will lean toward spy thrillers, kind of picked that up from my dad. But I'm often reading more news and articles that way. I have read several baseball books that are kind of easy chapters, kind of anecdotes, stories at a time.
But you said you're a Yankees fan?
I am a big Yankees fan.
Right. Okay.
You are? From Queens?
Not. My husband is a Cubs fan, so I'm Cubs by marriage.
I can appreciate that, at least. Cubs fans were long suffering until they won. I get that. I do want to show folks the New York Times Magazine, and I think the layout here is really interesting. I want to make sure we get the full thing. The caption, really, born into this climate chaos, haunted their childhood, has upended their adolescence, and will define the rest of their lives, by Charlie Locke. What's interesting about this, the New York Times Magazine banner is not just at the bottom of the page, but it's actually drowning. It's cut off at the bottom a little bit. And so that's, I think, very interesting in terms of the way they handle that. These are the kinds of things we look at on the show, Amy, and that we notice. And so we have a keen appreciation for all things design, when colors change, when headlines change, etc. But I want to, again, thank you for joining us today. This has been a fascinating look at the New York Times, particularly the election coverage. Our guest has been Amy Kelsey, Deputy Director of News Design for Print for the New York Times. If you joined us late, you can always watch the full show from the beginning as soon as we're done on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and our Digimentors website. It'll take a little while to get the video up on Instagram, but we will put it there as well. We do want to make sure folks know that we will not have a show next week. Sree and I will be in Dubai for a client. So there's no show November 17th. And our guest on November 24th, the Sunday before Thanksgiving, will be John Lee, Executive Director of Goodman Media International, a PR firm. And he's also president of the Irish Business Organization. The show is produced by Digimentors, the social digital AI events consultancy that Sree started several years ago. I'm proud to be the Vice President of Events and Communications there. And of course, Muckrack is our longtime sponsor. Thank you to Muckrack for all of your support for the show. We have just a few minutes. A couple of folks have chimed in. I just want to make sure we have a Facebook user saying we joined late, but we'll watch later. And that is actually my sister, Amy, watching. Her name is Amy. I don't think I even mentioned that to you. I think when we,
today.
What's that?
There's so many Amy's today.
There's so many Amy's. Amy Banani, Amy Kelsey, of course, and my sister, Amy Parekh Mehta. I think this time I actually didn't mention it to you. I thought it'd be too cheesy. Oh, my sister's named Amy. Like, that kind of. But Amy, thank you for joining late. Appreciate that. And wanted to let you know if you do want to stay later, we will entertain questions and comments about people's reactions to the elections. So put a note in the chat if you don't mind, if you're watching in Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube. If you do want to stay later, let me know. We'll give it a few minutes, Amy, just to see if to kind of judge whether folks want to stay. And if not, we'll just end the show and we'll pick up the conversation on Thursday. And Amy is saying have fun in Dubai next week. Thank you, Amy. Ken is saying thank you to Neil, Amy, and any unseen producers. I'm looking for any other producers. I don't see any. Ken, this is all you get today. Myself and when Sree is the host. That's our New York Times Read Along production team. But thank you for joining us. Gunther says thank you for the very interesting show. Gunther, of course, is watching from Austria. Thank you. And we know that Amy at least can stay later. So we'll stay on for just a few minutes and we'll see how that goes. Ken says Amy says you're welcome to Ken for saying, I think she misunderstood. We're saying thank you to Amy, our guest, not Amy, my sister. But that kind of thing is going to happen, of course. But again, we had a fascinating look at the front pages of the New York Times over election week. I want to just bring that up again, just to remind folks to show what we were looking at. We had the Tuesday, the final sketch, and then the front page. We looked at the Wednesday final sketch and front page. We also looked at Amy's notes, her kind of planned sketches. We did a deep dive on that. And this was Thursday's sketch and final. This was Friday's, but was also interesting. We looked at all three of these papers, the pre-election, election day, and results. And we also looked at the same days for 2020 when Biden won, and 2016 when President Trump beat Hillary Clinton. And again, because of later deadlines, they were able to put the results on the Wednesday issue of the paper. We talked about election night at the Times. We also talked about what it was like to produce the paper during the pandemic with Amy. So thank you so much, Amy. Really appreciate you joining us. It really did meet and exceeded at least my expectations. And, I just love this stuff. It is definitely one of my favorite shows that we've been able to produce. So thank you for spending your Sunday morning with us. It meant a lot.
All right. Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
right, we'll excuse
everybody.
you. Amy will get going with the rest of her day. And we will continue the conversation if folks are interested in staying. If you want to share your thoughts about the elections and explore that a little bit, one of the things that we want to do is to create a space for people to share what they experienced on Tuesday night, what they were thinking Wednesday and Thursday, where they are at now. Debbie says a good show and many on many timely issues. Thanks, Neil and Amy. Thank you very much. Amy, my sister, not Amy Kelsey, shares that she was devastated by the results. I was as well. I was certainly, it was different this year, unlike 2016 when Hillary lost. The initial assumptions was that she would win, and it was a big surprise. It was on. The polls were close. There were articles saying that it could go either way. There could be a landslide if the polling is off. It could go toward Trump. He could win all the swing states. It could go toward Kamala, and she could win all the swing states. And of course, it went toward President Trump. That needle, when I first checked into the needle, it was already past the halfway mark, maybe going this way toward a little bit toward Trump. And as the night went on, it went further and further and further that way. I want to share a post that I shared on social media that offered my thoughts. This is what I was able to put out on Wednesday. For all those whose cares have been our concern, the work goes on, the cause endures, the hope still lives, and the dream shall never die. And what I wrote in the caption, this was on Instagram. I shared this across channels. Like most people on my feed, and slightly less than half of the people who voted, I'm still trying to make sense of what happened yesterday. I went through a range of emotions: disbelief, anger, sadness, frustration, despair. We all need time to process the election results. I am inspired by people who are focusing on the work ahead. This was already Wednesday. People were thinking about the work ahead. I'll get there. For now, these words are aspirational. I'm not sure my mind is there quite yet. My heart definitely isn't, but this is where I want to be. And that's where I was thinking on Wednesday. And certainly interested in hearing more and sharing with folks, listening to folks on Thursday when we do our show. Again, as a reminder, on Thursday evening, Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. We'll focus on post-election despair, anxiety, and fear. Shauna Vircher will be our guest. And Dawn Newberg, of course, is my co-host. Our goal with that show in particular, and a little bit with today, we intentionally put it for the after the 10 a.m. hour, is to create community, to give people a safe space to share their concerns, and also know that you're not alone. That if you are devastated by the results, as Amy said, if you do have concerns about what the future holds, that we need to find time and space to support each other, and make sure that people understand that there's a time for expressing that concern, expressing that fear, and at some point when you're ready to organize and to see what you can do to move on. So again, thank you for joining us. It's been a great show. We appreciate your time on Sunday morning, and we look forward to your joining us, not just on Thursday, but 2 weeks from now for our next edition of Sree's Sunday New York Times Read Along. Thank you very much, and we look forward to staying in touch. Bye-bye.